This video is brought to you by Miniature Market. Thousands of board games, discounted prices, miniaturemarket.com.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today we're going way back to the year 1755 where there was a great earthquake in Lisboa. And today we're going to be trying to rebuild that city by taking up the rubble and putting in public buildings and building stores on certain streets and going to visit different nobles and managing influence and money. And we're going to be building ships and dealing with goods. Today we're talking about Lisboa. This is from Eagle Gryphon Games. And so I'm going to give you a brief overview. The game has lots of rules. It's a pretty heavy game, so I'm going to try to go at a higher level, but still giving you some understanding of the mechanisms. And then I'll see you on the other side. Here we have the board of Lisboa, which is a large board. Barely I can fit it in frame. There's many different ways to gain points in Lisboa, but there's really two main ways. One of the main ways has to do with this whole area of rebuilding the city of Lisboa. These are streets, and people are going to be building public buildings at the ends of these streets, like this one, and players will also be building their own storehouses on these streets and gaining points in those ways. Now we can see this one was built on the brown road because this point little notch shows this, and this one was built on the blue road. Now these were built, and they got abilities as they built those, and these different ones give you abilities as you do that, or just one-time bonuses, if you will. And then at some point, a public building was built here, and this shows the two colors of these streets, the blue and the brown. So if this was placed after these, each of these are going to get points with whatever is on the street just below. So this one would have gotten 4 points. This player would get 3 points. These are random every game. And so if this was placed afterwards, they would get those points. If this was placed first, now anybody else that builds on this street here, this row of those colors would get it. So sometimes this could be built first, and then other players then fill in afterwards. And when they fill in, as long as it coincides with a row or column that has that street, then it would get those points. So they can happen in different times. For example, let's say somebody is able to build this public building right here. Brown matches the brown, so that's okay on this top row. And now it's going to activate anybody that has a storehouse that is on the brown street, which in this case is just this one, would also get the points. So it's like this. However, if this was like this player is on the brown street, this player would only get the 3 points. So they smartly built here to try to get that. So as these are built and as these are built, many points are coming. You're also getting points by having a majority of the different amount of storehouses on these. So if you have the most storehouses on the brown street, you get 9 points, and then 6 and 3 for second and third place, and then same for the different majority bonuses there. Those are two of the main ways to get points in the game. The other main way to get points in this game are called decree cards. They have this little sort of gavel icon on it that you'll see a little bit later. And when you're able to get these cards, they're sort of end game bonuses. For example, if you have the most, or at least equal to the most of the book's resource, you'll get 5 points at the end. Here you'll get, a point for every book you have, or a point for every of the blue rubbles that you collect over the game, or a point for every one of these cards you have. So different things, some of them have to do with buildings and storehouses. So all different goals throughout the game. That's the other major way to gain points. Each player also gets their own player board. Well, they'll start with some resources. They'll start with some money. This is actually 5. It's kind of a little bit hard to see sometimes whether it's a 5 or a 10, and some single dollars there. And you'll be tracking different things like permits and how many storehouses and how many people you put out for influence, different ways to hold different tiles that give you different abilities. So everyone has a board, and it kind of gives you some summary of the different actions you can take. Each player is going to start with 5 cards, and they'll have 5 cards throughout the game. And on your turn, you're simply going to pick one of your cards, and you're either going to play it onto the board, or you're going to tuck it into your own player board. There's 2 types of cards. There's noble cards, which have the nobles on them, or treasury cards, which have different actions. Now, money is one form of currency in the game. The other form is influence that you'll be spending to take actions throughout the game. So 2 sets of currency. So on your turn, you're simply going to pick one of your cards and either tuck it into your player board or play it onto the board. Now, if you tuck it in the direction of the arrow. So the nobles always go on top, and the treasury cards always go on the bottom. So this shows me tucking down with this arrow. And then you usually get something good, but sometimes it's something bad. Like this says I have to pay $1 to tuck this, Most of the times they give you things, but I would tuck this in like this and I would have to, in this case, spend $1. By the way, there's lots of icons in this game. Like each player gets their own huge player aid, which is multiple pages. It tells you what all the different numbered tiles do in the game. It also tells you what all these different abilities. It says, hey, spend $1. That's the one we just did. So each of these, each player gets one of those. So we've tucked this in, we've spent $1. And now that we've tucked this, this actually will gain us a certain amount of influence, as I showed you as a certain currency in the game to use to make to do actions. This will be worth 2 influence when you score influence throughout the game, which only happens in 1 or 2 ways. But it's important to note that you are sort of building influence. By the way, you can also only hold as many cards here as at the beginning you can only have 2. We'll show you how you unlock and hold more later. But once you've tucked a card, you have 2 options. The option you'd use most often is a state action. When you do that, you trade, it's this little hand symbol. You could take some of these actions here by paying the cost. You could spend gold on any 3 of these, or you could spend silk here, books here, or tools there. And as you spend these, like let's say I wanted to do one of these actions, I could spend one of these resources. When you do, you put it on top because you can never do the same action twice in the same turn. That helps you remember that. But you're going to spend some resources to do some of these actions. I'm not going to go over all these in detail, but some of them allow you to produce more goods, to build ships which gives you influence, allow you to sell and make money. This allows you to gain favor tiles, which allows you to go and follow on other people's turns. This allows you to get permits, which allows you to then build those public buildings. I'm not going to go through all of these in detail, but you use these to take certain actions throughout the game. And then once you're done, you'll take one of the cards up on the top here, and when you take it, you'll simply just flip over the next one for anybody else for the next turn. So then on my next turn, I have the 4 starter cards that are still there, and then one of the newer cards. Now we mentioned on your turn you can either tuck a card or play a card into the court. See what happens when we play a card. We're going to visit that noble. We would take our purple piece there, because we're purple, and we put it right on there. That helps us keep track of whose turn it is, and we're going to try to visit this noble. In order to do that, we must pay influence. Now the amount of the influence is going to be here. In this case it's 0, but this will fluctuate throughout the game. In this case it's 0 plus however many other players are there, pieces are there. So in this case I'm purple, so there's 2 other people's players there, so it's going to cost me 2 influence. I'd have to be able to spend 2 influence in order to do this. Then I could take one of these 2 state actions and then the 1 main action for that noble. We'll go over some of these actions earlier. This is that decree. As I told you, these are the decree cards over here, these bonus cards that we talked about. Those are the end game goals. That's the main way to get those end game bonuses. Each player starts with one of these random favorite tiles. Over the course of the game, you can gain some. And after you do a turn by visiting a noble, if someone else has a favorite tile of that type going in clockwise order, they can spend it to then follow your move and be able to also do this action in one of these. They still have to spend the influence and such, but they can actually still try to follow you and do that action. Now during the game, you're going to be taking actions to maybe get some of these permits, and you'll be able to place those on your board. And then once you have them, if you take this action, you can build one of these of the right permit color onto the public building. So let's say I had the permit, a blue permit, and I took this action by visiting that noble. I'm able to build this on any of the spots. Let's say I build it here. When you do that, you get to take the rubble from this, and now this is there, and that is built there. And I showed you how that works earlier, how you could score points if you have buildings that intersect it. But you also get to add that rubble to your board, and anytime you have an entire color, you're collecting sets, you get to remove this. This means now, instead of just being able to hold 2, you can hold 3 of each good. You can hold 3 of each card here, because up until that point you can only hold a few. So you can, it starts helping you sort of build an engine, if you will. Also, not only will each of those cleared rubble columns score you 3 points at the end of the era and the end of the game, you also get to put your color cube here, and so when you take a decree card later, you can spend a cube and take a second one. And again, that's important because taking these cards, or even taking 2 on a specific turn, is great, because that's where you're going to get a lot of points throughout at the end of the game. And how you build these are very interesting. It's another way that you get those rubble cubes. Let's say I wanted to build here. I could take this here, and assuming I could take this action, I would go there and I would put one of my storehouses on it, and I have to remove 1 rubble from this coordinate system, and this tells you how much it's going to cost. Right now, it's going to cost me, each of these cubes costs different. So this is 3, that's 2, and that's 1. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's going to cost me 10. But I can take one of these cubes off, so now it's only going to cost me 7. If I have $7, I can now afford to build here, and I put my storehouse. I get to take a decree card right away, because that's what it says, and I would look to see if there's anything that I could score from public buildings. But I do get to take that rubble And that's the main way that you'll get rubble onto your board like that. There's other small ways, different abilities that might allow you to do it, but that's the main way. Now we talked about spending influence, and during some of the actions you'll be able to move this clergyman 1 or 2 and then take a tile on either side, and those are different things that give you either immediate abilities, ongoing abilities, or endgame abilities. But once this gets all the way back here, we do some scoring and you're able to actually gain influence that's in your board. And at that point, everyone would score however many influence they have on their board, in this case 5. So we get 5 influence that we can now start spending for other actions. The other way to gain influence is anytime you build a ship, which is one of the small state actions. When you build this, essentially you'll spend the amount of different goods that the hull size is, in this case 1, and then you'd immediately be able to score influence to be able to spend on other actions. And the ship's good because other people, including yourself on your turn, can sell. When you tuck a card, one of the things you could do is sell. And you could sell this to anybody, including yourself if you have a ship. And what the good thing about this is at the end of your turn, you'll flip this, you'll get rid of it and it will be a point. So everything that your ship uses will be a point. And you'll get certain money depending on where it is on this track. And as people produce goods over the course of the game, these values will end up going down. Now the first error goes until someone has filled 2 of these rubble spots, or until 3 of these different stacks have run out. And then we'd go to the end of an era where you can get rid of some cards and get some abilities, but then you'll start a second era. Some new cards will come out that are more powerful, and you'll be dealt new cards that are more powerful to get you to the end of the second age. And then this continues to the same thing until those powerful cards are gone, or until someone has another 2 of their rubble columns gone, and then you go to endgame scoring. At the end of the game, you're going to get points for how big your total hulls are on your ships. You'll get 3 points for each of these columns of rubble that you've been able to fill up. You'll go through the majority of scoring of how many stores you have on the different streets. You'll get points for having a certain amount of money. You'll get points for the decree cards if you meet those objectives. You'll see who has the most finished permits, which allows you to build those public buildings. And you'll get 15, 10, or 5 points if you have the most, second most, or third most. And you also get points for each of these favorite tiles that you didn't use. And then whoever has the most is the winner. All right, well, there's Lisboa. Let's first start with what I liked about it. I typically love historical themes. Many times when I play these historical themes, it's something I did not ever even know about, like the earthquake in Lisboa. But I like how it sort of brings you into the game in this historic aspect and allows you to learn about it. I often go off and either read books or watch movies or learn even more about it after I've played the game, and I just love the historical theme here. Now, the art itself, some people love it, some people don't. It's sort of in that blueprint style, which I do like because it sort of fits the theme of rebuilding things, because you need, following the blueprints of rebuilding the city. So I like that they went with that. The turns themselves. Now, even though this is a heavier game and there's plenty of things to try to do and plenty of things you need to do in order to get things done, I like that at the essence of your turn, you're literally got 2 choices. It's like, are you going to tuck a card or are you going to go play a card, on the board there and do what it needs to do? So I like that in general, it's simple, but then of course there's a spider web of a multitude of decisions once you make that choice as to what you'll do next. But I like how sort of it starts easy and then it just really opens up on your turn. I'm very impressed with how balanced the game is. In all of my plays, it's either been tied or like the leader and the winner has been like 1 or 2 points ahead and the next player 1 or 2 points ahead back from that. And it's always been super balanced. And with how big of a game this is and how random some of the setup is and how things can change with the scoring cards and the way that the rubble is and things like that, with having that many variables in a game that's this big with so many things going on, to have it this balanced is a design feat that I can't even imagine how long it must have taken. I think he said when I saw him at Origins, Vital told me it took him about 3 years to make this game, and I believe it because of how balanced it is. My favorite part is building the streets, and that's the crux of the game. And it's very puzzly, it's a randomized setup, and you're trying to figure out, okay, which rubble can I take out to make it cheap enough for me to build there, but at the same time trying to collect these rubbles as sets to allow me to then move forward on the rubble track to be able to hold more cards, hold more goods, and get more points at the end of the era and the end of the game. And it's just so many unique choices there of looking at the puzzliness of the different rubble, looking at the buildings that are there, looking at the public buildings that might already be there, trying to figure out how can I build a store to get what I want for being there, have it be cheap enough, have it get the rubble I need to build the set, and also either already be able to score points because there's a public building there, or be ready to have a permit to maybe put a public building there myself next turn to try to continue to score points. And sort of that coordinate system and the puzzliness of the game is really the crux of the game, and it's what I like most about it. I like that you're managing influence and money, and there's certain ways in the games that you can sort of turn one for one, or if you don't have influence, you can spend money, and you can spend money for influence if you go up one of the tracks. So I like how you have those two different currencies that you're sort of balancing throughout the game. And I love being able to follow the visits to the nobles on other players' turns. You can kind of follow if you have the favor token and go there sort of a la like, Tiny Epic Galaxies where you're following a movement, but not, I like how that you can follow on those if you have the favor token, but it's not often beneficial to do so. So if someone had just built a public building and you want to go ahead and visit that noble, do the same thing, well, they might have just built the building that you wanted to build and put somewhere else, and now you don't have a permit for the other color, so you can't build that building. So I like how it has some tension there where, ooh, I can follow, but I really can't because I can't do you just did the thing I want to do. And I like that. It really gives a lot of depth to the game. And I love the end game decree goals where, earlier in the game, people aren't, you could go from early, but then you're sort of pigeonholing yourself as to what strategy and other people can block you. But you might want to do some of that, but then towards the end, everyone's sort of rushing to try to get a bunch of these decree goals. And I love that the more rubble sets that you finish, the more these decree goals you can get on your turn. And I think that's a cool aspect. Anything I didn't like about the game? Well, it's a very heavy game, so obviously it's going to have a steep learning curve. If you don't like a lot of rules, if you don't want to sit there, if you're not going to be taught the game, you are going to need an afternoon to learn the game for sure. It has a steep learning curve, which some might not like. And because of the learning curve, if it's not a game that you're going to play very often, maybe, even if you're not playing it once every couple weeks or once every month, you're going to need to relearn things, which might be a little bit of, a challenge. It says 30 minutes per player. I'd say that's not accurate. It's closer to 1 hour per player. You might get it down to 45 minutes per player if everyone really knows what they're doing and you've played it often. You don't need to refresh anything, but it's probably going to be closer to 1 hour per player, which might be a little too long for some. And to get things done, you have to do multiple steps, and there might be too many steps for some people that say, you know what, I just want to do this to get this, and maybe to get this. And this one, you kind of have to look ahead and think multiple steps ahead and multiple turns ahead, and it might be too many steps for some. Overall, I tend to like the sort of 1 to 2 hour games. This one's a little bit longer than that, definitely a little bit heavier than things I normally review, but I enjoyed it. I love the theme, I love the art, I love all the things I said, and that coming together, I enjoyed the game. I wouldn't ever really turn down a play if I had the time to play it with you, if we're at a game group with a lot of time. But obviously with the cons are going to make it probably not come out as often, but it is one of those bigger epic games that I do enjoy because of all the reasons I said, and that's Lisboa.
This video was sponsored by Miniature Market's Review Corner. The Review Corner features podcasts, video, and written game reviews by gamers for gamers. Miniature Market, the online gaming superstore. Thousands of board games, discounted prices. Check them out at miniaturemarket.com.